Every outsourcing transaction has a transition, but only some have a transformation. The transition actually happens when a company outsources a function to a service provider, and that service provider actually performs that function in pretty much the same way. The transformation, on the other hand, is where the provider takes that function and modifies it in some usually pretty substantial way, so that it's performing the same essential function in a different way. Let's say that a company wants to outsource its computing functions. So it may currently have a mainframe and a bunch of servers that it wants to outsource. A transition would be where the service provider takes that mainframe and operates those same servers the same way that the customer did. A transformation, however, would be where the company, where the service provider takes those mainframes and the servers initially, but through a series of projects, gets rid of the mainframe and then consolidates or virtualizes the servers. When that happens, you have a transformation. The service provider is performing the same function, but it's doing it in a different way.
Well, it's important to realise that transition is the first key point in an outsourcing transaction. It's when the relationship really begins to bite. It's when a service is handed over from one provider to another, or from in-house provision to the outsourcing service provider. So if transition begins to go wrong, then the dangers are loss of continuity of service, which is the key thing you're seeking to avoid, a potentially extra cost, and potentially extra time taken to achieve the handover of the service. So I can think of one case in point from a transaction I was involved in, where there was almost a complete swap out of the teams, from the team that had negotiated the transaction to the team that were delivering the transaction, and there was no real continuity. So transition began to unravel, and all the benefits from that continuity of service, from the handover, began to leak away. And it took some time for the company and the service provider to realise this, get the teams back on track and make certain that there was no loss of continuity of service.